Harlan Crow, this wealthy Republican donor, is making a series of tuition payments for Thomas's grandnephew, who Thomas was raising as a son. We don't know the exact.
Bro, before it was, this dude was taking him out of vacation. He was flying him on, like, what is it called? Jets and yachts, staying in his hotels, like paying his mom's house. Like, now he's paying tuition for his nephew. I ain't gonna lie. This is sounding like they're like a couple or some shit. This is a little sus, but it's also a little scary because it's a Supreme Court justice that's involved with a billionaire who's giving him money. This is very uncomfortable.
Exact dollar amount, but according to ProPublica, it could have been to the tune of $150,000.
$150,000 from a Republican mega donor to Justice Clarence Thomas so he can send his grandnephew to 2 different private schools. Now, again, we don't know the exact dollar amount.
Is this dude this stupid though? Like, to be doing shit like this in the open? Like, if you're gonna do corruption, like, come on. If you're gonna do like corruption, you're gonna just do it right in the open?
But
Stupid
before
as
I
hell.
give you the details of this incredible story, again, broken by ProPublica, I do want to remind you that Harlan Crow, that Republican mega donor, the billionaire, had been spending a lot more money in helping the Thomases jet set.
Yeah, I highly doubt that this guy is just being generous and giving his money. Like a billionaire that is funding a Supreme Court justice in the US. That sounds suspicious.
Okay, like $500,000 a year just on one vacation that the Supreme Court justice's family would.
It's some like sugar daddy stuff, dog.
Go on with Harlan Crow and his family. So the $150,000 sounds like a lot, but in the grand scheme of things, that's actually a drop in the bucket considering how much money this guy had funneled to the Thomases. With that said, let's get to the details of the private school situation. So in the video that you just watched, there was reference of Justice Clarence Thomas bringing his grandnephew in as one of his own, taking care of him as if it's his own child. So his grandnephew is Mark Martin, and unfortunately, you know, his father was in prison for a drug-related case. And so since Clarence Thomas also had some difficulty in his childhood, he brings on his grandnephew and wants to give him a good life. So that was a kind thing to do, a good thing to do.
Yeah, he has money. He doesn't need to take it from a billionaire. Why are you using money, unless you were using your nephew as a way to cause corruption? That doesn't sound like, it's like money laundering through a kid.
Thomas gained legal custody of Martin and became his legal guardian around January of 1998, according to court records. Martin, who had been living in Georgia with his mother and siblings, moved to Virginia, where he lived with the justice from the ages of 6 to 19. So, you know, that was basically his formative years. He's being taken care of by Clarence Thomas and his wife. Now, by 2001, Clarence Thomas was disillusioned, unhappy with the public school system in the area. And at that point, he decided, we need to put this, my grandnephew, into private schools. So this is where the story gets good. Martin spent his junior year of high school at Hidden Lake Academy, a therapeutic boarding school in Georgia. Hidden Lake boasted one teacher for every 10 students and activities ranging from horseback riding to canoeing. Those
Horseback riding.
services came at an added cost. At the time, a year of tuition was roughly, I can't even believe it, $73,000 plus fees.
God damn. But like, Harlan Crow can easily afford that though. I mean, not Harlan Crow. I mean, Clarence Thomas has enough money to afford that. So why is he like, why is he using some billionaire to be paying for his kids' tuition? Even if you're gonna do corruption, like, why are you making it easy for people to catch your ass? Like, you're just very stupid.
Back then,
From like the billionaire is also very stupid as well.
this is you know, in the early 2000s.
Remember, I mean, he's a tiny little kid. This isn't college. This isn't graduate school. 73,000 back then is probably over 100,000 now. Every year. That's an astounding amount of money. And I've never been privy to schools like this, so.
Nor have I.
And like the name is so appropriate, Hidden Lakes. I guess this is where the super duper rich send their kids. And guys, this isn't like, oh, well, this tangential to Clarence Thomas because it's like a great grandnephew or something. No, legal guardian of the kid since he was 6 years old. Clear and proudly says that he raised him as a son. And I believe it. And by the way, again, to Anna's point, he should get a lot of credit for raising the kid. That's a wonderful thing to do. But when you're using.
No, that's not a wonderful thing to do. Sure, for the kid, but for the country, that is not. That's a scary thing, bro.
Using a donor's money to send him to the most exclusive schools.
Not just the donor, a fucking billionaire donor who has a lot of power, who is trying to use the Supreme Court justice for his own stuff. This is not cool.
In the world, and at a bare minimum, even Harlan Crow admits they've spent at least $100,000 on these schools. And I know you've got a lot more, but I actually want to read you graphic 9 because that's Harlan Crow's statement about this, and I found this to be the most comical of all of the things.
And honestly insulting.
Yeah,
because
100%.
He's co-opting certain rhetoric to provide cover for the very obvious corruption and conflicts of interest here. So go ahead.
So here's how Harlan Crow's office responded to ProPublica's piece. Harlan Crow has long been passionate about the importance of quality education and giving back to those less fortunate.
Then pay your taxes.
Especially at-risk youth. It's disappointing that those with partisan political interests would try to turn helping an at-risk youth with tuition assistance into something nefarious or political. Wait.
This is just some bullshit, bro. This is some bullshit, bro. This is a Supreme Court justice who earns a lot of fucking money. He doesn't need you to be paying for his nephew's tuition. He's fully capable of doing that. You're not supposed to be even talking to a fucking Supreme Court justice. You're not even supposed to have a fucking relationship, okay? We need to put in more laws that these people cannot even be seen together. Because that's just like put in prison. Shit like this should put you in prison, bro. This is endangering the country and its laws and everything. This is if this is happening right in the open, I wonder what is happening behind closed doors.
Wait a minute. He's living with a Supreme Court justice. What part of that is at risk?
Insane.
No, but was Clarence Thomas going to do something to him, or Ginny Thomas?
Yeah, there's plenty of other kids you could help. A Supreme Court justice doesn't need you. You could spend that money on other things. There's plenty of other kids who have literally nobody, zero help in orphanages and stuff. You can spend that money on. Clarence Thomas' nephew is totally fine. You can go find somebody else that really needs it.
Or their incredibly rich neighbors? I mean, he's basically calling him an at-risk youth because he's black.
That's exactly right. That is exactly what he's doing.
And by the way, Harlan Crow and Clarence Thomas are against exactly this type of help for actual at-risk students.
No, but guys, that's, in my opinion, the most important point to make here. At-risk youth, I mean, in their minds, at-risk youth are at risk simply because their parents have failed them. And to be sure, in a lot of cases, that is part of it. However, at-risk youth are also at risk because of the lack of opportunities they have.
True, like a kid should have suffered because their parents are dumb and made some dumb decisions. Like a kid shouldn't pay the consequences of their parents' decisions. This is wrong.
And the lack of opportunities begin in the public education system that has been intentionally gutted by Republicans who do not want to pay taxes that adequately fund these public institutions.
The level of education you get should not depend on how much money your parents got in their pocket. That should not depend on what type of education you get. Should not depend on how rich your parents is.
So with that said, let's get to actual numbers here. Because as I mentioned, Martin's only spent junior year of high school at Hidden Lake, okay? The rest of the time, he was at a different private school, and we should get into the numbers in regard to how much Harlan Crow had funneled to Justice Thomas so he can pay for this tuition. Crow Holdings LLC wired $6,200 to the school, Hidden Lakes, in July of 2009, the exact cost of the month's tuition Imagine spending $6,200 a month on high school tuition. Anyway, The Wire is marked Mark Martin in the Ledger. The administrator at Hidden Lake told ProPublica that Crow wired the school money once a month to pay Martin's tuition fees. Okay.
Yeah, that's crazy, but it doesn't make the excuse doesn't even make sense. There's plenty of kids who have nobody. Clarence Thomas' nephew is in good hands. There's plenty of kids that need that. You could have easily helped, but somehow the only kid you seem to be helping is a fucking Supreme Court justice's nephew. Oh yeah, that's just you being nice and generous. Got it here, man.
Okay, so that went on for a year. But what about the rest of his high school experience? Where did he go? Well, we've got some details on that. For the rest of high school, Thomas sent Martin to Randolph-Macon Academy, which is a military boarding school 75 miles west of Washington, D.C., where he was in the class of 2010. The school, which sits on a 135-acre campus, charged between $25,000 and $30,000 a year,
Lord.
which is
holy shit. That's a lot of fucking money, dog.
I guess a bargain compared to the other private school. Jeez, it's crazy. Okay, and so we've said it once. We're gonna say it again because this is also important. Like, you can try to estimate how much money Harlan Crow funneled to Justice Thomas for this tuition money, but the exact total Crow paid for Martin's education over the years remains unclear. If he paid for all 4 years at the two schools, the price tag could have exceeded $150,000.
Oh hell yeah!
However, ProPublica spoke to Martin. They interviewed Thomas's great grandnephew as well. And it appears that at some point in Martin's childhood, Thomas was paying for private school himself. Martin told ProPublica that Thomas sold his Corvette, his most prized car, to pay for a year of tuition, although he didn't remember when that occurred.
Yeah. Okay, so Sam Alito did an interview where he was crying about how the Supreme Court justices are under attack. But all they did was bribery, and now all of a sudden people are criticizing us. What are we supposed to do, right? And so, well, you're supposed to be honest. And then he said, this is delegitimizing the court, the attacks against us. No.
This is evil, bro. This is straight evil. This is corruption right in front of our eyes, bro. This is scary, bro. This is what's done in the open. I don't know what's going on behind closed doors. This is bad.